I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm talking with Alan Hughes, the director of the FX docuseries Dear Mama about the lives of Tupac and Afeni Shakur. First thing I wanted to ask you is, I know you knew Tupac personally, but how familiar were you with Afeni Shakur's life prior to starting work on this project?
I was as familiar with the touchstones in her life as most of us in pop culture. The song Dear Mama, she was a former Panther. She struggled with addiction and overcame it. That's all I knew about Afeni going into Dear Mama. And unfortunately never got to meet her as well.
And what was the thing that was most surprising to find out as you were researching and learning about her in the process of making this?
I think the most surprising thing was everything you love about Tupac as an artist, poet, rock star. She had all that. And first, the intellect was off the charts. The charisma was off the charts. The leadership abilities. You hear spoken word stuff that she did when she got out of jail, when she was fighting for her, facing 360 years. And it's like early hip hop, But the fact that she represented herself in the Panther 21 trial, where they were facing 360 years, falsely accused of plotting to bomb parts of New York City, Manhattan. The FBI had this program, the COINTELPRO, that infiltrated the Black Panther organization, and it was all bullshit. And she chose to represent herself. That blew me away when I got to see her words and hear what people said, and even her closing statement. And I mean, you get the sense that she had this transcendent intelligence, this thirst for knowledge beyond her existence and experience. And even by the fact you hear in the first episode that why she named him Tupac Amaru, based off the Incan warrior that was martyred, because she wanted her son to know that Black people weren't the only people that were enslaved in the world. You're like, who thinks like that? She was special.
To get on the other side of this now. So, as I said, you knew Tupac Shakur personally, but in making this, did you find out anything about Tupac that you hadn't known prior to making the series?
A lot I found out about Tupac. I mean, going into the series, I knew him as a friend. We had a brief, violent altercation at the end of our friendship. But that didn't discount the fact that we had an intense year-long, love affair in the arts, and film and music, his music videos. And we were talking about doing movies, and we were very close. I would pick him up from the airport. So I knew him as a fellow 19-year-old at the time, right? But I didn't know about the abject poverty that he came up in. I didn't know about being a child of the Panther, and how the FBI completely obliterated his family, killed him, ran him out of the country. I put him in prison. But again, the poverty. 6 months before he signed with Digital Underground, he was sleeping on people's couches. So it wasn't just the childhood and what that does to the psyche. I had no idea, and I came out of this project with a tremendous amount of compassion for Tupac I just didn't have before.
Did you know about the aspects of him, like the way the attending of like the performing arts schools and any of that background about him?
When I knew him, I knew nothing about that, because bear in mind, this is 1991. It's the height of gangster rap. Tupac is having a difficult time trying to get his footing, and it's such a, as we now call it, toxic masculinity. That was the order of the day. So the last thing 19-year-old Tupac is probably going to share with his friends is that he was at a performing arts school doing ballet and poetry and spoken word. So no, I did not know about that at the time.
You brought up that you had that that physical altercation with Tupac at the end of your friendship, and you went into a bit of that in your previous documentary, The Defiant Ones. Did chronicling some of your own personal history for The Defiant Ones make it easier to go into your own history for this series?
Absolutely. I think that's what unlocked I didn't realize until I did the Defiant Ones that I hadn't dealt with the depths of Eazy-E, who was my first like real teacher in this business. I hate to use the word mentor because it's corny as fuck, but Eazy-E was my first mentor. And then my relationship with Tupac. And as I'm cutting and filming Defiant Ones, I realized I was confronting this thing I had never processed their depths. So it opened me up with the Tupac part because that was a different dynamic. And what happened on the Defiant Ones was somewhere in the middle of cutting, Tupac kept taking over the movie. Like where it was 30 minutes about Tupac. And for 6 months, we were wrestling the movie back from him. And I go, wow, this dude is, you can't deny his power. But to see that in the middle of the edit, to see where your instinct was to go with him when it was about Jimmy and Dre. And I realized, I go, there's something happening here. And it was I had a cathartic experience with Defiant Ones just globally, because I was a part of all that stuff in the 90s. So yeah, it opened me up to like the possibilities of this cathartic journey, the singular one with him, his mother, and what little role I had in that one step he was in,
You go into this in both this film, obviously, and the Defiant One is the whole feud between the East Coast and the West Coast.
Yep.
And it still kind of blows my mind. How did the whole East Coast and West Coast thing get so out of hand? Because it feels like, especially when you're dealing with someone, especially when you have people that are involved in it that are professionals, and in some cases like CEOs of record labels, like someone would go, let's take a step back here.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep in mind, and it was chronicled a little bit in the Defiant Ones, this is the height of the profit margins in the music business historically, because CDs cost less to produce than vinyl and tape cassettes. So they're seeing stupid money with this. One. Two, it's when art started imitating life and life started imitating art, and the ghetto streets started coming into the CEO suites, right? And at that point, up until that point, if you look at the feud that NWA had with Cube or whatever, the diss records that had happened, that Big Daddy Kane and LL Cool J, it wasn't dangerous. It seemingly got dangerous with NWA and Ice Cube, but it was WWF wrestling, and everyone kind of knew it on the inside. So there was never a fear, Charles, that one could lose their life. So Tupac was the wake-up call. Like, no one had ever thought that could happen because they'd never seen it happen.
And but then you had I know this is something, but then you had Biggie killed. How was it, like 6 months later?
6 months later. Yep, 6 months later.
Yeah, and was that still just like over? I can't remember if that one was ever solved, but
no.
So both of them remain unsolved.
Unsolved, yes.
Okay. So one thing that's interesting is, so you were originally making music videos, and then you transitioned to feature films, and now the past couple of projects that you've done have been documentaries. And what I'm curious about is there an aspect of documentary filmmaking that you've found you prefer to making narrative projects?
Oh, hell yeah. I preferred. I think it's more nimble and more revolutionary. You can do more with the medium of documentaries than you can in scripted. You're flying by the edge of your seat half the time. It's real people, it's real lives. I've always been a bigger fan of the documentary medium than I was ever of the feature, even though the features were the destination. I'd rather watch a great doc than watch a great feature for some reason. I've always been like that. And me and my brother did our first doc in '99, American Pimp. So I look at this, when you look at the cinema and you look at the history of cinema, like over 100 years, the documentary medium is the one that remained kind of without a revolution for a long time. It wasn't the last 10, 15 years, save an Errol Morris here or there, or who's my other guy that I'm forgetting about, who's the great documentary guy that does the features and docs. His name will come to me, the German fellow.
Oh, Werner Herzog.
Yes. there were people doing innovative things, but it wasn't until 5-10 years ago where you started seeing pieces. You were like, wow, this is really pure cinema happening here. The sights and the sounds and the velocity of it started changing. And at the time, there was no money in it. And that started changing. You know, Netflix, you have to give them credit. HBO, you have to give the ultimate credit to for like really trailblazing, you know, the doc space as far as like high end and getting it to people. But once it went globally with Netflix, and then you had these massive doc series, for me, I prefer it, but I'm going back to features because I like the structure in features. It's more of a natural body weight for me, weight class for me. But I'll never stop doing documentaries because I think there's so much innovation that can still be done in the medium, and it's just the beginning, I think.
I did want to ask about one thing that, and I can't believe I didn't ask you about this last time I talked to you about the Defiant Ones. You won a Grammy for Best Music Video Film for the Defiant Ones, and I was just curious as to what was that experience like, because that had to have been unbelievable for you.
That was surreal. You know, that was surreal. You know, who would have thought that we would even be nominated for a Grammy, let alone win a Grammy? And we were doing well on the award circuit. We were doing well with nominations here and there. And we got some really good Emmy noms on that one. But it was never thought about a Grammy when I started the Defiant Ones. But to win that Grammy for that film in particular, a film that's almost a love note to music and how it can change your life and inspire you beyond your existence. I just remember, I've heard there's love songs about being weak in the knees. I didn't know that was a real thing that could happen until I got up on that stage and my knees went weak. And I was like, I didn't know that's a real thing. There's actually a funk song in the 80s. I'll make you weak at the knees. I make you feel. I'm like, that's a real thing. When I got the Grammy, my knees were weak, and that's when I knew. I said, this is beyond me. That was surreal. And it was in New York that year. That's what was awesome.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. I forgot those were in New York that year.
Yep. Was it Radio City Music Hall?
Probably.
No. The Madison Square Gardens.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So I actually want to play on a question that I asked you last time. So last time I talked to you, I asked you if you were to win one of the Emmy nominations you had, what should be the music that plays when you, or ideally, what would be the music that plays as you make your way up to the stage? Last time for the Defiant Ones, you said the Ennio Morricone, Strength of the Righteous from the Untouchables. So I'm curious for this one, what do you think should be your walk-up music?
You're pretty fucking good, man. My Ambitions as a Writer.
Awesome.
Yep. And My Ambitions as a Writer. Yep. That's the one. That was never really my Tupac song. I was always like Two of America's Most Wanted, him and Snoop, or Gangster Party, whatever that song is called. I love Shed So Many Tears. I adore that song. But My Ambitions as a Writer, I found new meaning in that. And that would be it.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best for whenever the Emmys end up being. And and to all of our viewers, please like, share, subscribe, and keep going to goldderby.com to update your Emmy predictions. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it.